January 20th, 1982, Veterans Memorial Auditorium, Des Moines, Iowa, 7:47 p.m. The crowd was electric. Thousands of young fans packed the venue, screaming, pushing against security barriers, holding up handmade signs. The air was thick with marijuana smoke, sweat, and anticipation. This was the heart of America's Midwest, conservative territory, where rock and roll was still viewed with suspicion by many parents and church groups. But tonight belonged to the kids, and they had come to see the Prince of Darkness himself, Ozzy Osbourne. Backstage, Ozzy was in rare form. The Diary of a Madman tour was at its peak. His solo career had exploded beyond anyone's expectations, surpassing even his years with Black Sabbath. Crazy Train was an anthem. Randy Rhoads, his brilliant young guitarist, was being hailed as the next guitar god. MTV was playing their videos constantly. Ozzy had proven all the doubters wrong. He was high on success, and high on other things too. Ozzy's pre-show ritual hadn't changed much since his Black Sabbath days. Bottles of cognac, lines of cocaine, pills of various colors and purposes. His tolerance was legendary. What would incapacitate most people barely affected him. Sharon Osbourne, his manager and soon-to-be wife, tried to limit his intake, but backstage at a rock concert, her control only went so far. 5 minutes, Ozzy, a roadie shouted through the dressing room door. Ozzy took one last drink, straightened his leather jacket, and headed for the stage. He could hear the crowd chanting his name. Ozzy, Ozzy, Ozzy. It never got old. No matter how many shows he played, that sound, thousands of voices united in anticipation, still sent electricity through his body. The lights went down, the crowd erupted, and Ozzy Osbourne walked onto the stage in Des Moines, Iowa, with absolutely no idea that in less than an hour he would commit an act that would define his career, horrify the nation, and become one of the most infamous moments in rock and roll history. But to understand what happened that night, we need to go back a few weeks, because the bad incident wasn't random. It was the culmination of a trend that had been building throughout the tour. The Diary of a Madman tour had developed a strange tradition. Fans had started throwing things on stage, not just the usual flowers and bras, but rubber toys, fake snakes, plastic spiders, rubber bats. It tied into Ozzy's dark, occult-tinged image. His songs referenced demons and darkness. His stage show featured fog machines and ominous lighting. Fans loved playing into the theatrical horror vibe, and Ozzy, always the showman, played along. When fans threw rubber creatures on stage, he'd pick them up and interact with them. Sometimes he'd bite their heads off, a theatrical gesture that drove the crowd wild. It was all fake, harmless stage theater, rock and roll pantomime, except it wasn't always fake. A few weeks earlier, on January 13th in Los Angeles, something happened that should have been a warning sign. A fan threw a dove on stage, a real live dove. Ozzy, assuming it was rubber like everything else, grabbed it and bit its head off. The dove was real. Blood sprayed. The crowd went insane, some cheering, some screaming in shock. Backstage afterwards, Sharon was furious. Animal rights groups were outraged. The media had a field day. Headlines screamed about the sick rock star who killed innocent birds on stage. But here's the thing, the controversy actually helped. Album sales spiked. Concert attendance increased. MTV played his videos even more. The outrage made him more famous, more notorious, more interesting. Sharon, brilliant manager that she was, recognized an opportunity. The publicity is actually good for us, she told Ozzy. People are talking, they're buying records. Just maybe try not to kill any more animals. Ozzy agreed, but he was Ozzy Osbourne. Agreements and reality didn't always align. So when the tour rolled into Des Moines a week later, the stage was set, literally and figuratively, for disaster. The show started strong. Randy Rhoads' guitar work was phenomenal as always. Rudy Sarzo on bass and Tommy Aldridge on drums provided thunderous support. Ozzy's voice, often underrated, was in good form. He performed Over the Mountain, Flying High Again, Mr. Crowley. The crowd sang along to every word. The energy in Veterans Memorial Auditorium was intense. Des Moines didn't get major rock tours often. This was an event, something these kids would remember forever. And they were determined to make it special. About 40 minutes into the set, during a brief pause between songs, it happened. Someone in the crowd threw something onto the stage. It landed about 10 feet from Ozzy, near the front. In the dim stage lighting, through the haze of fog machine mist, it looked like another rubber bat, just another prop to play with. The fan who threw it was a 17-year-old kid named Mark Neal. Though accounts vary on the exact name, some say it was a different fan. Memory gets fuzzy over decades. He'd found a dead or dying bat in the parking lot before the show. Why he decided to bring it inside, why he thought throwing it on stage was a good idea, he probably couldn't fully explain even if asked. Teenage logic, impulse, wanting to be part of the show. The bat hit the stage and either was already dead, or was so stunned it wasn't moving. Under the stage lights it looked completely fake. Like all the other rubber creatures fans had been throwing, Ozzy spotted it. The crowd was watching, waiting to see what he'd do. This was part of the show now, the theatrical interaction. He walked over, picked it up. The bat was surprisingly heavy for a rubber toy, but Ozzy was high, distracted, and performing on autopilot. His brain, clouded by alcohol and drugs, didn't question it. In the moment, in the chaos of a live show, things happen fast. Decisions get made without thought. He held it up to the crowd. They roared their approval. And then, playing to the audience, channeling the Prince of Darkness persona they'd come to see, Ozzy Osbourne bit the bat's head off. For a split second, nothing seemed wrong. The crowd was screaming. The band was playing. It was just another moment of stage theatrics. Then Ozzy tasted blood. Real blood. Warm, metallic, organic blood filling his mouth. Not stage blood. Not fake. Real. The bat's body twitched in his hand. It wasn't rubber. It was flesh and bone and fur. It was a real animal. And its head was in his mouth. Time seemed to freeze. Ozzy's eyes went wide with realization and horror. He spit out the bat's head and dropped the body, which fell to the stage and twitched once more before going still. Blood was running down his chin, dripping onto his leather jacket. The crowd's screaming intensified, but now it was mixed. Some people cheering because they thought it was an amazing theatrical effect. Others screaming in genuine shock because they'd just watched a man bite the head off a living creature. Ozzy stood there, frozen, blood on his face, realizing what he'd done. His brain was trying to process through the drugs and alcohol. That was a real bat. He'd just killed a real bat. With his mouth, in front of thousands of people. Randy Rhoads, playing guitar nearby, had seen the whole thing. His fingers kept moving through the song, but his face showed absolute shock. The other band members were similarly stunned but trying to keep the show going. Ozzy stumbled backward, wiping blood from his mouth. He looked out at the crowd, then back at the dead bat on the stage. For a moment he seemed like he might run off stage. But he was a professional. The show must go on. That's the rule. So he kept performing. He finished the song. He did 2 more songs. But his performance was off. Distracted. He kept touching his mouth, spitting, trying to get the taste out. Between songs he could see roadies at the side of the stage looking horrified. Finally, mercifully, the set ended. Ozzy walked off stage to thunderous applause, but he wasn't celebrating. The adrenaline was wearing off. The reality was setting in. Backstage was chaos. Sharon Osbourne came running up, her face a mixture of fury and concern. "What the hell did you just do?" she screamed at him. "Tell me you didn't just do what I think you did." "It was real," Ozzy mumbled, still wiping his mouth. "The bat was real, Sharon. I thought it was rubber. I didn't know. There was blood. Oh God, there was blood." The tour manager was already on the phone. The venue manager was demanding answers. Security was trying to keep fans from breaking into the backstage area. And someone, probably the smartest person there, was calling a hospital. Because here's what nobody had considered in that moment of horror and confusion. Bats carry diseases. Serious diseases. Fatal diseases. Rabies. Within 20 minutes, Ozzy was in the back of a car racing toward Iowa Methodist Medical Center. His mouth still tasted like blood and bat. His mind was reeling. The high from drugs and alcohol was clashing with pure fear. Rabies isn't like other diseases. If you catch it and don't get treatment immediately, it's almost 100% fatal. Once symptoms appear, it's too late. The virus attacks the central nervous system, causes brain inflammation, and leads to a horrifying death. And bats are one of the primary carriers. The emergency room at Iowa Methodist had never dealt with anything quite like this. A famous rock star who'd bitten a bat's head off and needed emergency rabies treatment. The doctors were professional, but you could see the disbelief in their eyes. "Mr. Osbourne," a doctor said, shining a light in Ozzy's eyes, "I need to ask you a very important question. Did the bat bite you, or did you bite the bat?" "I bit the bat," Ozzy said, the absurdity of the statement hitting him even through his intoxicated haze. "Right," the doctor said, managing to keep his composure. "Well, you're going to need rabies shots, and they're not pleasant." That was an understatement. Rabies post-exposure prophylaxis in 1982 was brutal. It involved a series of extremely painful injections, many of them administered directly into the abdomen. The needles were long. The serum burned.
And Ozzy, sitting on that hospital bed at 11 p.m. in Des Moines, Iowa, was about to experience pain that even his high pain tolerance couldn't fully block. The first injection made him scream. Sharon held his hand, which was shaking. The doctor prepared the second injection. "How many of these do I need?" Ozzy asked through gritted teeth. "Today." "Several." "Over the next few weeks?" "Many more. Rabies treatment is a series. You don't skip any doses. If you skip them, you die." The injections continued. Each one felt like fire being injected into his stomach. Ozzy cursed. He cried. He begged them to stop. But they couldn't stop. Rabies doesn't care about your pain threshold. While Ozzy was enduring this medical nightmare, something else was happening. News was spreading. Someone at the concert had called a local radio station. By midnight, Des Moines radio was reporting that Ozzy Osbourne had bitten the head off a live bat. By morning, the story had gone national. By noon the next day, it was international news. And the media reaction was explosive. "Ozzy's sick bat stunt," screamed the New York Post headline. The Des Moines Register ran "Rock star bites bat. Requires rabies shots." Rolling Stone magazine called it the most shocking moment in rock history. Conservative commentators saw it as proof that rock music was corrupting America's youth. Religious leaders denounced Ozzy as satanic. Parent groups organized protests. Politicians, always eager to score easy points, called for bans on rock concerts. MTV, which had been playing Ozzy's videos in heavy rotation, pulled them from the air temporarily, worried about their corporate image. The backlash was intense and immediate. This wasn't just a scandal, it was a full-blown moral panic. Sharon Osbourne, watching the news coverage from their hotel room, knew they were at a crossroads. This incident could destroy Ozzy's career. Record labels might drop him. Radio stations might ban his music. Concert venues might cancel shows. Sharon had a different idea. She'd studied the music business her entire life, learned from her ruthless father Don Arden. She understood something that the panicked record executives and tour managers didn't. In rock and roll, controversy sells. "We're not apologizing," she announced to a meeting of worried executives the next day. "Sharon, we have to apologize," the record label representative insisted. "This is a PR disaster. Parents are calling for boycotts. Religious groups are protesting. MTV won't play his videos." "Good," Sharon said calmly. "Let them protest. Let them be outraged. Let them talk about Ozzy non-stop, because every minute they spend talking about him is free publicity." She was right, of course, but it was a huge gamble. One wrong move and it could all collapse. Instead of apologizing or claiming it was an accident, Sharon leaned into the controversy. She didn't try to soften Ozzy's image. She embraced the madness. She encouraged media to refer to him as the Prince of Darkness. She made sure every article mentioned the bat incident. And she made one brilliant decision. She didn't let Ozzy comment publicly about regretting it. No apologies. No "I'm so sorry, it was a mistake." Just silence from Ozzy, letting his actions speak for themselves. The strategy was working, but it came with real consequences. The remainder of the tour faced significant challenges. Several cities banned the concerts outright. Boston officials initially refused to allow Ozzy to perform. Salt Lake City canceled completely. Protesters showed up at nearly every venue, holding signs calling Ozzy everything from satanic to animal killer. But here's what the protesters didn't understand. Their presence made the concerts even more appealing to Ozzy's core audience. Young people, especially teenagers, are naturally attracted to things their parents and authority figures disapprove of. The protests made Ozzy seem dangerous, rebellious, countercultural, exactly what his fans wanted. Ticket sales didn't decrease, they increased. Every show that wasn't canceled sold out. The controversy made Ozzy more famous, not less. Meanwhile, Ozzy was dealing with the physical aftermath. The rabies shots continued for weeks. Each injection was agony. He had to maintain a strict schedule, missed even one shot, and the treatment could fail. The psychological impact was significant too. He had nightmares about bats. The taste of blood haunted him. In interviews years later, Ozzy would describe this period as one of the lowest points of his life. "People thought I was having fun, being the wild man of rock," he told Rolling Stone in a 1984 interview. "But I was terrified. I'd nearly died. I was getting painful injections every few days. I couldn't believe I'd been stupid enough to bite a bat." But publicly, at the time, none of that vulnerability showed. Sharon made sure of it. The Prince of Darkness doesn't admit fear. He doesn't show weakness. He's larger than life, capable of anything. The incident fundamentally transformed Ozzy's public image. Before the bat, he was known as a successful solo artist who'd escaped Black Sabbath's shadow. After the bat, he became an icon of excess, a symbol of rock and roll's dangerous edge. MTV eventually lifted their ban. The controversy had made Ozzy too big to ignore. Crazy Train and his other videos came back into rotation, and viewership numbers were higher than before. Record sales of Diary of a Madman spiked dramatically. People who'd never heard of Ozzy Osbourne suddenly wanted to know more about the crazy rock star who bit bats. The album eventually went triple platinum, far exceeding initial projections. But there were lasting negative effects too. The incident cemented certain perceptions that would follow Ozzy for decades. He became synonymous with dangerous, unpredictable behavior. Insurance companies started charging premium rates for his tours. Venues implemented stricter security protocols. Parents became genuinely fearful of their children attending his concerts. Ozzy also developed a complicated relationship with the incident. On one hand, it made him famous beyond his wildest dreams. On the other hand, it reduced him to a caricature. People who knew nothing about his music knew him as that guy who bit the bat. In his 2010 autobiography, I Am Ozzy, he wrote, "The bat incident overshadowed everything else I'd ever done or would do. I could cure cancer and people would still want to talk about the fucking bat." Sharon, in later interviews, admitted the incident was a double-edged sword. It made Ozzy a household name, she said, but it also meant he could never be taken seriously as a musician by certain people. Critics would always dismiss him as a shock artist first, musician second. The other band members had mixed feelings. Randy Rhoads, the brilliant guitarist, was reportedly frustrated that Ozzy's theatrics often overshadowed the music. Randy was a serious musician, classically trained, and he wanted to be recognized for his artistry. Instead, interviews always focused on Ozzy's antics. Tragically, Randy would die just 2 months later in a plane crash, never getting the full recognition he deserved during his lifetime. The bat incident, in a strange way, contributed to Randy's legacy being somewhat overshadowed by Ozzy's controversies. The venue in Des Moines, Veterans Memorial Auditorium, became part of rock history. For years afterwards, locals would tell stories about being at the Bat concert. The venue itself eventually placed a plaque commemorating the incident, turning infamy into a tourist attraction. The fan who threw the bat was never officially identified publicly, though various people have claimed credit over the years. Some say he felt guilty. Others say he was proud to be part of rock history. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. Animal rights groups remained angry for years. PETA regularly protested Ozzy's concerts throughout the 1980s. They saw the incident as emblematic of rock culture's disregard for animal welfare. Ozzy eventually made donations to animal charities, though he never formally apologized for the bat. The incident also entered popular culture more broadly. It's been referenced in movies, TV shows, cartoons. The Simpsons parodied it. Comedy shows made jokes about it. It became one of those cultural moments that transcended its original context. Medical professionals used the incident as a teaching opportunity. Rabies awareness campaigns in the 1980s sometimes referenced the Ozzy Osbourne case when discussing the importance of seeking immediate treatment after animal contact. From a purely medical standpoint, Ozzy was incredibly lucky. The bat could easily have given him rabies if he hadn't sought immediate treatment. The fact that he got to the hospital quickly, despite being intoxicated and initially not understanding the severity, probably saved his life. Dr. Robert Willoughby, one of the doctors who treated Ozzy that night, gave a rare interview in 2002 reflecting on the incident. "Mr. Osbourne was fortunate in his timing," he said. "An hour's delay in seeking treatment could have been fatal. Rabies is not forgiving." For the rest of the 1982 tour, security at Ozzy's concerts was dramatically increased. Fans were searched more thoroughly. Any items thrown on stage were examined before Ozzy could touch them. Stage managers stood ready to grab anything suspicious. But the damage, or the legend, depending on your perspective, was done. Ozzy Osbourne had bitten the head off a bat in front of thousands of witnesses. It was real. It was documented. It was undeniable. In the decades since, the incident has been analyzed from every angle. Psychologists have discussed what it says about celebrity culture and the pressure to constantly escalate shocking behavior. Music historians place it in the context of rock's theatrical tradition. Cultural critics see it as a moment when rock crossed a line from rebellious to genuinely dangerous in the public consciousness. Ozzy himself has told the story countless times, in interviews, in his autobiography, on his reality TV show The Osbournes. Each telling adds small details, confirms others, sometimes contradicts previous versions. Memory is fallible, especially when drugs and alcohol are involved. But the core facts remain undisputed. On January 20, 1982, in Des Moines, Iowa, Ozzy Osbourne bit the head off a real bat, thought it was fake, required emergency rabies treatment, sparked a national controversy, and paradoxically became more famous because of it. Today, 40-plus years later, the incident remains one of the most infamous moments in rock history. It's discussed in documentaries. It's taught in music business classes as an example of publicity, both good and bad.
It's become inseparable from Ozzy's legacy. When Ozzy was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006, the incident was mentioned in his introduction. When he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, reporters asked about it. When he announced his final tour, articles recounting his career inevitably included the bat story. Sharon's gamble paid off in the long run. The controversy didn't destroy Ozzy's career, it turbocharged it. He became one of the most recognizable figures in rock history, transcending the music to become a pop culture icon. The bat incident was a significant factor in that transformation, but it came at a cost. Ozzy has dealt with addiction, health problems, and the psychological toll of being reduced to a single shocking moment. The man who created Paranoid and War Pigs, who invented aspects of heavy metal, is often remembered primarily for biting a bat. In his later years, Ozzy has expressed mixed feelings about the incident. "I can't change it," he said in a 2019 interview. "It happened, it's part of my history, but I wish people knew there was more to me than that one stupid, awful night." Yet without that night, would Ozzy Osbourne have achieved the level of fame he reached? Would he have become the cultural icon he is? Would his career have lasted as long? The bat incident nearly destroyed everything. It horrified people. It resulted in weeks of painful medical treatment. It sparked moral panic and protests. It could have ended his career. Instead, it defined his career. It made him immortal. It transformed John Michael Osbourne from Birmingham into Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, the man who bit the bat. Sometimes, the thing that nearly destroys you becomes the thing that makes you legendary. And in rock and roll, legend is everything.